So let's look at some blackwork patterns now and how to put the patterns together. A lot of books show you lots of patterns, but not many books actually explain how to interpret the printed pattern onto the fabric. So I'm just going to have a little quick look at that there on this stitch here. So these are interlocking zigzag shapes. Blackwork patterns, just to reiterate, don't always necessarily have a name, so I may call it something that's appropriate to the stitch. So if you see it somewhere else and it's called something different, don't worry about that. So this is the pattern we're going to work, and this is what it actually looks like when you get it in a book or something. You might print one off from somewhere or see one in a book, and it's drawn onto a grid. So we have to translate this grid onto the fabric. So what this means is each one of these squares on here is the fabric. It's a piece of the thread that makes the fabric. So here is the weft and here is the warp, and these black lines here are the stitches, the individual back stitches that make up the blackwork patterns. Where these lines of the grid cross is where a hole is. So this will be one hole, over a thread and down a second hole, up in this hole, over a thread diagonally and down a hole. Now it depends what fabric you're using as to how long you make this. I'm going to show you on an Ada fabric, so I will literally come up in a hole, go across one thread and down another hole, and I'll show you at the end, hang around at the end, I'll show you what it looks like on a different count fabric. How you read these patterns is up to you. Now some people might see it in a different way to me. You might see it as a row of vertical stitches straight across, like so, and then you come back with a zigzag pattern underneath, then another row of vertical stitches. You might want to work the whole stitch as you go, so a vertical stitch, diagonal, diagonal, vertical, diagonal, vertical, diagonal, vertical. You may want to come down, so there's a stitch in every row here with a diagonal and then a straight stitch. You'll just have to practice a few to see how you see the stitches. You may see them differently to me. You may find the way I work it is fine, but that's just a bit of practice really. So have a spare bit of fabric next to you and you can try them out and see what works before you go onto your actual piece. So that's how to read a pattern, and I said at the end we'll have a look at some different size patterns. So this is the pattern that we're going to work on here. I've worked half of it so you can see what the pattern looks like. Doing it in blue this time. So remember, blackwork is the technique, not the colour necessarily. And if you haven't seen them already, just check out the videos on how to start your thread and how to make up the basic blackwork stitches before you start your patterns. So I'm going to come up here. Now if you're not sure where to go, you can look at what's previously happened. So I've got the bottom of my zigzag here, it's the same as this one here, which is the same as this one, so I can literally look at what happens underneath this stitch, and there's a V shape. So underneath here is a V shape, so it comes up in this one here, and there's my first straight stitch. Here's my V shape underneath. So remember, doing back stitch, come up forward and down the hole, and just not worry about the side at the moment. I'll tell you what happens at the side in a minute when we've done a few stitches. So ahead of yourself and then back down the hole. Try and take the needle down in a hole that's already got a thread in it, so you're pushing the thread through to the back. Now I'm going to, I think, work my way across with my diagonals. I'll put in my vertical ones while I'm at it, then come back and put in the bottom vertical ones. You need to just try a little bit to see what you find easiest. When you get to the end of the row, or get to the edge of the shape that you're filling in, you need to adjust your pattern to fit the shape. Now this is called compensating. So you compensate with the stitch to fit the pattern. If we carry on over, we've gone over our line and it doesn't look nice and neat and tidy, but you must try and keep the stitch going as long as you can. Keep that pattern going. So I can put another vertical one in there. Now my next stitch would actually come from outside that circle. That would be the next one if I was carrying on, but it's outside my line and that looks a little bit messy, so I'm not going to put that stitch in. I'm going to leave that stitch and start my next row. Oh, I'm just going to put the tails in first, don't forget the tails. I'm going to come across now and put those in. So you will need to make decisions when you get to the sides, get to the edges of your shape, what stitches you put in and what you don't. So I can get that one in there, there's a whole stitch there. And if I was carrying on, the next stitch would be a diagonal stitch that way, but it's outside my shape, so I'm not going to put that one in. But I can put this one in this way and get a whole shape there. I'm going to put that little tail on as I go now, try and do that whole design in one go, that whole row in one go. Using all the holes, I'm never going through the fabric. Count the holes. And you'll find after a while that you can see the pattern, you don't need to do any counting really. Get it into a rhythm. Not too tight a tension. If you pull it too tightly you'll distort the fabric and therefore the pattern. So just a nice even tension on those stitches, nice and gentle. Now I've reached the bottom of my shape. Can just get a diagonal one in there. So I'll put that one in. I think a few more diagonals. Running out of thread, so can I just make it last? I can, I think. Ooh, just about. So just fitted nicely actually in the bottom there. So put a stitch in where you think you can fit one, and if you can't, just leave it out. Blackwork would normally have an outline around it, so you can just cover up any of these gaps with an outline stitch around the edge and it will neaten it all up. One more word about the pattern is start somewhere in the middle so you're not immediately compensating for the stitch. It's very hard to count right from the edge. Get the stitch going first and then you can go back and fill in afterwards, and don't try and make your stitches fit your shape by counting it. If it fits nicely at the top and you've counted it out, it probably won't fit at the bottom, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Fill the shape with the stitch and just let it do its own thing in the shape. I just wanted to show as well what this looks like on a different size fabric. So this Ada fabric I'm demonstrating on is a 14 count, and this here is a linen, an even weave linen of 28 count. This is 28 threads per inch, so quite a bit smaller than this one, and I worked exactly the same stitch on this fabric. So if I use it in the same way and I count one thread on here as one thread on here, this is the size it comes out. It's very small. I've done this in one strand of stranded, so it comes out very tiny. So you can choose what size you want your stitch and you can make it bigger. So if you just double the count, so every single thread now becomes 2 threads and every single hole now becomes 2 holes, you get this size here. So I've just doubled it. So instead of coming from one hole over one thread into the next, I've come over 2 and I've made every stitch twice as big. That's important, otherwise you'll get a different pattern. And now comes out roughly the same size as this fabric is twice as big as this fabric, so it comes out the same size. So you can choose what size you want to count your patterns according to what size fabric count that you want to use, and just adjust your thread accordingly. If you've got a very fine pattern, use a thinner, finer thread, and a larger one you can use a thicker thread. And again, just try those out on a little sample at the side first, because you're not quite sure how big they'll come out. So that's how to count a pattern, and that's interlocking zigzag stitch.